Hi, everyone. On behalf of KPCC and LAist, welcome to our very first Film Week and Chill virtual event. My name is Rebecca Stummy. I'm the events manager for KPCC and LAist. I want to invite you to engage with us and your fellow attendees in the chat function throughout tonight's event. If you're in a position in which you can support KPCC and LAist, we're always grateful for anything you can do. Go to support.kpcc.org/in-person. And if you want to stay up to date on our upcoming virtual events, you can sign up for our events and newsletter. Check out the link for that on your screen and in the chat function. Thank you once again for joining us. And now, without further ado, a man who needs no introduction, the host of Film Week, Larry Mantle.
Becca, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be with you this evening and to get our Film Week series back up and running, albeit virtually, but we've had hundreds of Southern Californians able to join us for the start of Film Week and Chill. Now, unlike the Theater at Ace Hotel series that we do, this one is really designed around films to help us relax, to have fun, movies that may have a message and are certainly artistically worthy, but are also just flat out escape from the pressures we face, the pandemic, political discord, and the like. So it was an easy decision for me to choose one of my favorite films of all time, The Incredibles, written and directed by Brad Bird, who joins us, with a wonderful score by Michael Giacchino, who composed the score and will tell us about how he and Brad collaborated on the musical sound of the film. And of course, what would a Film Week event be like without our critics? I'm so pleased to have with us Film Week critic and president of the Los Angeles Film Critics Association, Claudia Puig, and Charles Solomon, Film Week critic, noted animation authority, man who's written so many books on animation, and it just gives us such insight into the art form. We'll be having this series of films in weeks to come. We'll be announcing them on KPCC and LAist and let you know about our future films during this period before we return to in-person Film Week Screening Series. So let's start with The Incredibles by playing one of the selections from the film, which really give us a sense of how this family that's living in an era where superheroes are not able to practice their daring feats to save humanity, but have problems just like the rest of us at home.
So, how about you, Vi? How was school?
Nothing to report.
You've hardly touched your food.
I'm not hungry for meatloaf.
Well, it is leftover night. We have steak, pasta. What are you hungry for?
Tony Ridinger.
Shut up.
Well, you are.
I said shut up, you little insect.
Well, she is.
Do not shout at the table. Honey?
Kids, listen to your mother.
She'd eat if we were having Tony Loaf.
That's it.
Hey!
Stop it! Stop it! Oh, it gotta be toast!
Stop coming in the house. No, sit down.
No! Hey, no force fields!
You started it.
You sit down. You sit down.
You'll pay for
Violet.
Simon J. Palladino, longtime advocate of superhero rights, is missing. Gazer beam.
Bob, it's time to engage. Do something. Don't just stand there. I need you to intervene.
You want me to intervene? Okay, I'm intervening. I'm intervening!
Sister Violet, let go of your brother.
Brad Bird, thank you for joining us. How'd you come up with the idea for the family of superheroes?
Well, it started with another project where I had a sort of a fantastical character that was past his prime. And then I started thinking about what if a superhero was past his prime? And at the time, I was trying to break into movies. I was working on The Simpsons, but I was really trying to get into movies. And I had all this anxiety. I also had a new family. And I had all this anxiety of being bad at either being a dad or not being able to get into the movie business. In other words, if I got a break in the movie business, I would if I threw myself into it completely, I might be a bad dad. And if I was a good father, then how could I give the movie attention it deserves? So that pull between work and family is definitely in the film.
Well, and also the sensibility of the film, the era, it's like 60s futuristic. Where did that idea come from?
That just, when you experience something as a child, it kind of sears its way into your DNA. And that's everything I thought was cool when I was a kid. I thought Johnny Quest was cool. I thought James Bond was cool. I thought the music was cool. I thought the clothes were cool. The gadgets were cool. The enemies were cool. And so this was kind of all of that put together.
Michael Giacchino, thank you for being with us. So when you and Brad first talked about the idea for this and the sound of The Incredibles, how did Brad describe what he was looking for?
Well, I remember when I went up to Pixar for the first time, which was a really strange experience because, I was going into this place that I didn't have a job. I didn't have the job yet. I was just going to meet Brad, and they were going to show me some clips from the film, and then Brad and I were going to talk about it. And I remember very specifically, we started talking about animation because I'm a huge animation nerd. I love it so much. It was actually one of the things I wanted to be as a kid, was an animator. But we started talking about animation, and then Johnny Quest came up in the conversation, and we were supposed to be there talking about The Incredibles and what this could mean and what is this, how important this job could be, blah, blah, blah. We just went on this tangent about Johnny Quest and how much we love Johnny Quest. And then we started talking about Hoyt Curtin, who wrote the music for Johnny Quest, and how much I loved him and how much Brad loved him. And we just immediately hit it off, and it was really fun. And Brad's like, well, that's what I want this to sound like. I want this to sound like that. And I'll never forget, one of the things he said was, I want kids running out of this theater, like screaming this theme song, and pretending that they're these people from this movie. So we need to give them that energy that shows like Johnny Quest, James Bond, Henry Mancini stuff, all of that. We wanted to just take all those things he and I both love, mash them all together. And
Michael, let's listen to that, because you were kind enough to invite me to one of the days of the scoring session at Sony Studios. This was for Incredibles 2, but the music, of course, very similar to what was in the first film. Let's listen to this take on the closing credits. So there you get. So that's just my phone recording it, but the energy, the power you were talking about, it's there.
Well, and you know what? Why that is? It's because everyone in the orchestra is there in that room playing together. Nowadays they do this thing called tracking, and they record everyone separately, and it does. It can have a good effect to some extent, but it misses that sort of soul that happens, that thing that happens when everyone is together doing something. And that just made me really miss it. We haven't done that in well over a year now because of everything. But that's amazing. It's fun to see.
It's got to be hard, because as a musician, just to not have that kind of experience where your work is this in-person collaboration, and that the magic comes out of that.
No, being in the room with those musicians are the most talented people you will ever meet. You have to remember, those musicians never saw that music before that day. They don't rehearse. There's no such thing as rehearsal at a recording session in LA. You put it in front of them and they just play it.
Yeah, Brad?
Well, I was going to say that you know, besides being able to go to the sessions, which are like one of the greatest parts of making a film, because you just sit back and the movie just gets better without any effort from me. You know, I just sit there and everything gets better. But one of the things is I get a copy of whatever the day's work is at the end. I have CDs, but they have the clicks and they have the person, you know, counting down, and you get some talk. And I remember the chase that Dash does, where he goes 100 miles an hour, the 100-mile dash sequence, big action sequence in the first movie. It has tons of horn, and they are going the speed of sound. And they're like blowing. And at the end of this great take, you know, it goes quiet, and you hear one guy go, "Ah!" like that. And I hear that every time I hear that piece of music. It would seem like the perfect cherry on top of that sundae, because every musician in the room was exhausted because they had all done the musical equivalent of running 100 miles. And it was just really great.
We're already starting to get some audience questions in on the chat. If you would please put your location from where you're watching this. It's just nice, gives us a sense of place with your question. Later in the hour, we'll incorporate audience questions into the conversation. But Claudia Puig, I want to ask you about the characters in the film, the voice performances, the characterizations. One of the things I love about this is how much we identify with characters that are superheroes.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, and I think we identify with it, at least one and possibly more. You know, everyone's been a kid or been an awkward, you know, teenager, you know, embarrassed. And I particularly loved the Helen character. Holly Hunter's voice was so great. And I just felt like she was such a multidimensional, developed character, and we see so few of women in any kind of movie, animated or live action, that are really well developed. So she was like my favorite character. But everybody got to have their moment too. It was like everybody in the family, you know, even down to Jack. I mean, everybody. It was such a ensemble piece, and yeah, I love the characters.
Well, and the clip that we showed, you know, with her arms stretching around the table to grab it, what mom doesn't in some way, you know, relate to that?
You're stretched thin, right? You're so stretched, and you're trying to do a million things. And that's the thing that's so great about that character too, is that she's, you know, grounded, she's smart, she's funny, she's capable. That thing she says where she, you know, like women can save the world or whatever at the very beginning when she's being interviewed. And yeah, she just reaches out and handles everything. She's so great. I love her.
Charles, I wanted to ask you about the look of the Incredibles characters, because this was a big breakthrough for Pixar.
Well, The Incredibles is not only a good film and one that I like very much, having been following Brad since Amazing Stories, but it is a very important film, really a watershed film in animation history. This is when Brad and his artists showed that the way to bring CG characters to life on the screen is not to make them more realistic, as they had tried to do in films like Shrek and the early Toy Stories, where you get these kind of waxworks automatons that are so creepy, but rather to look back to the classic animation of Disney and Warner Brothers. By making them cartoonier, they come to life in a way that no human character had in CG before. And since then, everyone has copied it, and not just the artists at Pixar learning from him, Disney, DreamWorks, Blue Sky, everybody copied The Incredibles the way they used to copy the old Disney silly symphonies, that this is what we learn from, here's how to do it, this works, and it's a groundbreaking film in that sense.
Also want to talk about Brad's previous film to this, The Iron Giant, which is to me a classic film, but it was not a box office success, despite what a great film it was artistically. But that, of course, a 2D film. And here Brad takes on the challenge of, you know, doing the tech conversion to 3D computer animation.
Well, The Iron Giant himself was CG. The humans weren't. But that was a film that broke all the critics and animators' hearts, because we said, this could be our Dumbo. This is the movie we wanted to make. This is the movie audiences said they want to see. Why isn't anybody going to it?
Yeah, Brad, that had to be extremely disheartening coming out of a film that's that great, but the audience doesn't come out to see it. Where were you creatively and career-wise coming out of that film?
Well, it was really hard for me because that's exactly the position that I'd wanted to be in for so long. I wanted to direct for a long time, and I finally got my opportunity, and then it wasn't really supported. But I have a different viewpoint of it now, because I think part of the reason we were able to do what we did is because the studio really wasn't paying attention to us, which was great in many ways. As long as we stayed on a very tight budget, which was very hard, they kind of let us make the movie. But they were shutting down the division while we were making it. So they were basically folding up tents. And we kind of surprised them by making a good movie. And they weren't ready for it. And when we screened it for the audience, which was a very late screening, I mean, it was probably 30 or 40%, 50% in color by that point. So we were close to finishing it. And we got the highest test score Warner's had had in 15 years, but they were not ready to put us out. So we only had one poster. Our teaser poster was our only poster. No one knew what we were when they sent me around the country to promote the film. People would go by the posters and go, "What is that? Is that one of them Japanese films? I don't get it." You know, I mean, nobody knew anything, and it was like opening in a week. So I kind of started to get the feeling that we were going to be toast back then, but it was hard. But time has been our
very
friend
good to
on
it. Yes, I was going to say, how many people have seen the film now with its life on digital media? I'm sure.
Well, what's great is that word of mouth is what's made it work. Turner showed it before Thanksgiving, like they would show it for 24 hours straight on the Cartoon Network for a few years, and I think a lot of people saw it when they did that. And then people just mention it to other people, and more people are seeing it all the time. So it's really kind of cool.
Well, let's visit Edna, because of all the stars of the family, Edna Mode is the breakout star of The Incredibles.
Yes, things are going quite well, my God, no complaints. But, you know, it is not the same at all.
Weren't you just in the news, some show in Prague?
Milan, darling, Milan. Supermodels. Ha! Nothing super about them, spoiled, stupid little stick figures with poofy lips who think only about themselves. I used to design for gods. But perhaps you'll come with a challenge, eh? I was surprised to get your call.
I just need a patch job.
This is Mega Mesh, outmoded but very sturdy, and you've torn right through it. What have you been doing, Robert? Moonlighting hero work?
Must have happened a long time ago.
I see. This is a hobo suit, darling. Now you can't be seen in this. I won't allow it. 15 years ago, maybe, but now...
What do you mean? You designed it.
I never look back, darling. It distracts from the now.
Claudia, I want to ask you about Edna Mode, because when I saw the screening at the El Capitan for the first time, the audience just laughed so heartily. That character, even if people were not familiar with who Edith Head was, or, you know, big Hollywood designers, they understood what that character represents.
I love her. I love that. I remember I went back and looked at my review of the movie, and one of the things I said was Edna needs her own spinoff. And I would like to see a full movie. I know there's been a short that Brad didn't direct, but just the eccentricities. I love that, because I kept trying to place the accent, and I'm going, is it German? Is it Japanese? And I think I read somewhere that it was both. Is that right, Brad?
Yes.
Yeah, Brad, how did you find the voice artist for that role?
Well, it was the only one that was really cheap and really available all the time. So
Seriously,
I mean,
how did you end up doing it yourself?
well, I would fall into that voice when I was describing her to people, and I went to I actually went to Lily Tomlin and met with her, and she was going to record it, but she kept asking me to do the voice again, like, tell me how it goes again, and then she asked me to record the entire part into her tape recorder and leave it, which I thought was very strange. And so I did, and she called the next week and she said, I've been working at it, but I think you do it better. And right at the same time, we had internal screenings, and both John Lasseter and Andrew Stanton, the other directors at Pixar and creative heads of Pixar, said that I should do the voice. And so I just said, okay, I mean, it's weird, but okay, and there you go. There it is.
Charles, what do you want to say about Edna?
Well, firstly, yes, I love the character. I once described her as half German, half Japanese, and all ego. But she's the perfect example of that kind of caricaturing of reality and making the characters cartoony, because she's built along the lines of a Peanuts character. She could never reach the top of her head, and she clicks along on these impossible little steps, but it works. And you believe in the character and you're mesmerized by her.
Well, I was always wondering why they always had a scene where in Origins of Superheroes where the character, some guy, is sitting down and sewing, and I never bought it. I don't buy that Peter Parker is going to suddenly start sewing.
Hey, watch it. Watch it.
I love the cape. I love her discussion about capes when she talks about. Oh, sorry. Go on.
I was just going to say, I have a pillow that I sewed myself in 6th grade.
Does it still have any stuffing?
I love it.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
I love that scene about capes where she's just, all the various different people and why capes are not a good idea. I think she's got some of the best lines. It's just, could you do some of the voice for us? Would you do it?
I'm glad you asked.
I don't like to shatter people's illusions.
But if you insist, darling.
Let's spend a little time here with our villain, Syndrome.
The ship's unique design suggests there were no.
Huh? Oh, come on! You gotta admit this is cool! Just like a movie! The robot will emerge dramatically, do some damage, thrones of screaming people, and just when all hope is lost, Syndrome will save the day! I'll be a bigger hero than you ever were.
You mean you killed off real heroes so that you could pretend to be one?
Oh, I'm real. Real enough to defeat you! And I did it without your precious gifts, your oh-so-special powers. I'll give them heroics. I'll give them the most spectacular heroics anyone's ever seen! And when I'm old and I've had my fun, I'll sell my inventions so that everyone can be superheroes. Everyone can be super! And when everyone's super... no one will be.
No one will be.
The mic drop line, and it's just that gets such a great response. And you see that film in the theater. Take us, Brad, to how you came up with that line as the delivery there.
Well, I think it comes out of the character and the idea behind the character. The character wasn't originally in my movie. I had a different villain. I did a sequence, an opening sequence where the past of the Incredibles comes back to haunt them when they try to go underground. And this character entered the film and died in the opening sequence. And everyone liked the character so much that, me included, that I just said this guy should be the villain instead of the villain we had. But the interesting thing was there was this book written by Burt Ward, who played Robin on the 60s Batman version of Batman. And there was he was kind of pissed off in the book. He was, that, hey, I got more chicks than Adam West did. He was kind of resentful awful. And I kind of thought, well, what if the guy is a spurned sidekick? What if he's a guy that wanted the job of sidekick and got refused and has carried a grudge? So it just kind of came out of the line that Dash has early in the film, and it's a spin on it. But you know, the weird thing is that some people latched onto this stuff as me being some closeted Ayn Rand person, and you know, like a lot of people, I read Ayn Rand as a teenager and in my early 20s, and you know, agreed with it because it's all about the individual not getting snuffed out. And at 20, you have to be ready to be snuffed out because you know, the world does not have a place for you yet. And so everyone, I think, goes through that phase, but I don't think that's really. I don't think you can.
This was not the Fountainhead. This was
not
Rourke railing against.
Brad, can you talk
like
about?
I feel like I grew out of Ayn Rand, you know, pretty young.
Yeah, Charles, go ahead.
Yeah, Brad, can you talk about Syndrome's appearance? How is it there's this red-haired, blue-eyed character in the film?
Well, we were designing it, and Teddy Newton and Tony Fucilli, who were the two design geniuses, came up with this very crazy thing, and I thought that it looked kind of good, and I truly was blind to it. We were well into production, and the model had been built, and we were doing scenes before I realized that that's a crazy caricature of me. And you know, of course, I was like upset. I'm the villain, you know. You guys are making me the villain, but you know, it was too late at that point, and I did like the design. I just didn't think of it as being me.
But you never wore your hair like that, right?
No, but
that hat, it just goes right up in there.
For some reason, that's people's impression of me somehow. I don't know what it is.
We have Christian, who is joining us from Atlanta. Christian, thanks very much. Question for you, Michael. Wondering what challenge you faced when composing the score for the sequel?
Oh, well, I had it was funny because for a long time, and Brad will tell you this, I was like, no, don't make a sequel. That's it. Boom, you're done. You did that. It's great. Why do we always have to have like 2, 3, 4 of everything? You know, let's just make one good thing. Part of me doing that was that I was afraid to kind of go back and try and jump into those shoes again. I mean, that was my first movie that I did. And as much fun as I had, it was also, you know, somewhat traumatizing at the time. Some part due to Brad, because when I first got the job, we were on the phone and he was like, all right, you know, you got the job. And I was like, really? He goes, yeah, you got the job. You know, it's gonna, I was like, oh man, thank you. That's so great. I'm so excited. He goes, hold on. I just want to say one thing. And he goes, your music could ruin my movie. I was like,
no pressure.
I'm like, wait, is this a job didn't you say I got the job? Anyway, he goes, and he goes, now what I mean by that is that if your music is not in lockstep with my story, then the audience is going to start thinking things that we don't want them to think. They're going to start, their mind's going to go places we don't want it to go. So you and I have to be hand in hand this whole time, no matter what. It's always about the story, which I was a huge believer of anyway, coming up to this point. But it was such a great thing to hear, actually, because it's been ringing through my head ever since. And so coming back to the second movie, I thought of that. And I remember thinking like, okay, lockstep with the story. And of course, that movie was slightly different production schedule. It was a little more crazy because it had to get done in a much shorter time period than the first one did. But thankfully there was a lot of experience between the first one and the second one, which allowed us to do that fairly confidently. But once I jumped in, it was just a blast. I had so much fun with it.
Grant in Washington State wants to know what the most important aspect of a filmmaker and composer working together. What's the most important aspect? Brad, you want to take that on?
Well, yeah, I think just what Michael alluded to, the story is king, and you know, we are all serving the story. And when you're directing a movie, even if you come up with the idea, as I did with The Incredibles, if you're doing it right, you should only be really in control of it about half the time. And the other half the time, the movie is telling you what it wants to be. And if you don't listen to it, if you keep trying to force it into what your original conception is, then you're leaving riches on the table. And, you know, now I know Michael after doing many movies with him, and we actually have many more that we want to do together. Me saying that to him was kind of ridiculous, because one of the things that's Michael's strong suit is the same thing that you could say about a great composer like John Williams, or he's fundamentally a storyteller with me, rather than it being a layer laid on top of the story. It is another way to tell the story. And it is, I think that my nervousness about saying, you know, you could ruin my movie comes because, you know, you've worked so hard to make this thing come together, and there's all these missteps you make, and it's ugly, 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 and everything's wrong for like a couple of years. And gradually you decide this one thing works and that other thing works, and you get it together. And finally it's very beautiful. And suddenly you lay it down on the table, and the composer cuts it right open, and could kill it or could make it indestructible. And you're just sitting there like the nervous father, don't kill it, please make it. And, you know, now I practically, you know, drink iced teas while I'm doing it, because Michael always makes the movie, you know, great, you know, much better than it was going in. And
Michael,
I think different storyteller.
Michael, at what point do you come in when you're working with Brad? And is it similar to when you come into the process with another director with whom you're collaborating?
Well, Brad and I are great friends, so we talk all the time anyway. So whether he's in the middle of directing or not directing, we're always in communication. And you know, and it depends if it's an animated film or a live action film too. When he was doing Tomorrowland, I would hang out on set just because I wanted to hang out on set. I didn't need to, you know, it's not like I needed to go there and kind of get my head in the space of this movie. I just love being on a film set, and it was really fun to visit him. And you know, also during my Mission Impossible movies, it was just great to be around that stuff. So I come in I'm usually around very early in the process, if only because we talk about this stuff all the time, you know, and so, you know, but as terms of work comes, you know, I don't really jump in until there's like a rough cut of something to look at. Then I really start thinking, because then I can get a real sense of, okay, this is the direction he's headed in. And I can start planning how I'm going to go down the same road, you know, with him.
How big a staff do you use, Michael, and does that change on each project?
This is it. Yeah, this is it. I write everything. Of course, I have a couple of wonderful orchestrators that I work with, whom I love. Jeff Kricka, Tim Simonek, who worked on the first Incredibles, and then Gordon Goodwin is another amazing. He was the one person conducting in that video.
He was conducting in the clip, yeah.
Yeah, he did the arrangement for that piece actually, and these are incredible talents, and I'm so lucky to work with them. But when it comes to writing, it's just me sitting in this room and writing it, and because I feel like if I'm working with Brad, like Brad and I are doing this thing together, and I want to make sure if I hand something off to someone else, I can't be sure that it's going to be it's going to jive with everything I'm doing, everything I'm planning, you know? So for the most part, yeah, it's me.
I want to jump in though and say that because we're friends, and I consider Michael, you know, one of the principal collaborators that I have on a film, I talked to him about story ideas early on because we're friends and we're in contact with each other. But you know, I'll say, hey, what do you think of this? You know, and when I got brought on to Ratatouille, I only insisted on 2 people that I have, and one of them was the head of story, Mark Andrews, and Michael, and they had already hired another guy to do the score, and I had to, we had to give him a little money to, and it wasn't that he was bad, he's a good composer too, but I knew that I had to have Michael to get it the way that I wanted it,
Yeah, Charles, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say, that answer of Brad's to your question, Larry, shows you why he is such an effective director, that you cannot not watch Brad when he talks. And he can rally a crew like no one else I've ever seen. If Brad asks you to, you will step off a cliff because you know the airplane will fly up and you'll walk onto the wing and you'll be fine. And he can make you believe that. But Michael, tell them about writing the theme songs of the other superhero show for Incredibles 2. You told me that story once.
Oh yeah. So Brad, early on, when he's in the middle of making Incredibles 2, he's saying, "Oh, and I was thinking we could have these little theme songs that belong to the different characters, like one for Mr. Incredible, one for Frozone, one for Mrs. Incredible, kind of things like once they're famous, and would be things that would play on Saturday morning cartoons or commercials or whatever for toys, and things like that." And I was like, "Oh yeah, okay." And he kept reminding me, we had this date that he needed them by, the rough versions, by. And I forget what I was working on, something else. I was like, yeah, I'll get it to you. Don't worry. And I remember even a couple days before the deadline, you called me. You're like, "Don't forget, I really need these things. We have a recording session. I actually need them," because I needed to show it to Sam Jackson and for Frozone and all of this. I was like, "Don't worry, I got it. So the morning of that deadline, I wake up and I'm like, "Oh man, that was a good sleep." And I'm like, "I'm going to just take my time this morning." And then I remembered I didn't write the songs and they were due that day. They freaked out. I was like, "Oh my God." So I jumped out of bed. I ran up to my studio and I'm just sitting at that piano over there. And I'm like, "Okay, figuring that out, Mr. Incredible. Okay, that's a boom. There's one, Frozen. Boom, there's 2. And then I just with that Mrs. Incredible 2, Elastic Girl, stretching her arms. Okay, yeah, there we go. Boom. And I wrote the 3 of them, like, I swear to God, in like a half an hour. I sang them, I think, with my assistant Curtis, came in and helped. I was like, "Come on, do these harmonies with me." Sent them to Brad, and that was it. And he was like, "Great, they're great." But I panicked. It was like, it was like a red alert went off and sirens going. And yeah, that's not how I normally like to work.
He handed him in. He said, "Yeah, I've been working all week on them."
That was like cramming at the last minute, right?
Yeah, yes, exactly. It was the worst.
I was curious. So when you get inspired, do you go back and like watch Bond movies or Pink Panther movies or all the sources that you might be, or are those in your head?
It's so ingrained in my head. I grew up with that and I love it so much. And I was the recipient of the weirdest record collection you could ever imagine, which had all of this stuff in it. My dad had a wonderful record collection. We'd also get records from my great uncle he sold RCA console sort of record players at the time, when I was a kid. And so RCA would send him a bunch of records for demos, and he'd give them to us. They'd end up at our house eventually. So I had all of this exposure to all of that music, plus the incredible amount of music that was written during the 60s and 70s as I was growing up. At my, it was part of me. So when it came to doing this, I didn't really go back to listen to anything. I was just like, I dove in because I just knew that world so much and I loved it so much. And no one in a long time had done like sort of orchestral jazz for a movie. It was just a thing you didn't do.
And brass,
and
big oceans of brass. Yeah.
Yeah. It just didn't, there was no call for it, or I don't know, but that's what he wanted. And thank God he did, because it was a blast. I had so much fun doing it.
Brad, I wanted to ask you about CalArts and that experience, because you were there with quite a few other highly creative people who've made their marks on the industry. What was that like as a young guy going there at that time?
Well, CalArts, you can take a look at it behind Charles there. That's kind of what it looks like.
Edna's house.
Yeah.
Not as nice a lawn.
Yeah, no, it was a very weird thing because it just happened to time out perfectly with, you know, me getting out of high school. I went straight into the first year of the character animation program. And I think because of no one was teaching animation, there was just a handful of people that were getting into it. Most of the people that were learning animation were learning Saturday morning level animation. So it's just head going up, head going down, the mouth just jabbering, and hand coming up, hand going down, you know, really basic stuff. And there was a small group of us that were into this, and this was almost the only place we could go. So we kind of congregated there, and it ended up being this very fertile class in terms of people then going out and making a lot of different films and having a big effect on the industry. So it was very unusual because we were microscopically small. I mean, there were like 15 or 18 of us, and that was it. And, you know, the school is very famous for it now, but back then it was, you know, animation was like a flame that was almost going out.
Jen, in Emeryville, little town, I think up in the Bay Area, if I'm not wrong about that. Wondering for Brad, how you came up with all of Jack's powers in the first film and then expanded on them in the second.
Well, the idea behind that very quickly is like the rest of the family, where you go with archetypes, and men are the heads of the families. When men are the heads of the families, they're always expected to be strong. Mother figures are pulled many different ways at once, and are kings of multitasking. So having her stretch was good. You know, teenagers are insecure, so her powers are invisibility. Babies are unknowns, and you don't know whether they are going to be you know, the next leader of the free world or a bagman. You know, so they could possibly be imbued with more powers than have ever been seen before. So I had Jack be a polymorph, meaning that his body sort of hasn't decided what his powers are yet. You know, the fact that babies, you can put them in a deep end of a pool and they know how to swim because they haven't forgotten the inside of the womb, and they can grasp languages very quickly. And there's just something, you know, amazingly versatile about babies. So that was the idea. And when I had the first film, I needed, if it got too plot heavy, I needed something to cut to spark things up. And I thought leaving that kind of baby with a babysitter would be something to cut to. But when we filled out the story that we were doing had so much momentum by itself that I didn't need to cut to the babysitter. So we ended up doing the babysitter as a little extra film that went on to the DVD. But Teddy Newton, one of the top talents on the film and co-character designer, came up with this whole idea that he pitched on the first film of the baby getting into this match with the raccoon. And it was hysterically funny and very incorrect. I mean, it was even more violent than what we did. And but I thought it was hysterically funny, and I said to myself, if we ever do a sequel, this has to be in it. And so I had this unexploded bomb of Jack that the family didn't know about. The audience knew about his multiple powers, but they didn't. And that was a big sort of thing in the second movie.
Michael in North Carolina wonders how the fan favorite character of Frozone was developed, but let's actually watch the character.
Honey!
What?
Where's my super suit?
What?
Where is my super suit?
Put it
Serious, woman? We are talking about the greater good.
Greater good? I am your wife. I'm the greatest good you are ever gonna get.
Brad, it's such a funny film scene there toward the end of the film. How'd the character get developed?
Well, I just thought that I wanted to have a relationship that was relaxed, a good friendship by working buddies. It's like, you know, anytime you work at a job, there are people that you connect with and end up being friends with, you know, for a long time sometimes, as I am with Michael and Charles, and, you know, and so I just thought Bob should have a friend from the superhero days who is also a superhero, also in hiding, and they can still hang out together. But the temptation would always be for them to moonlight and do some superhero work because it's in them to do it. And I thought that would be a really good relationship to explore. And it was an opportunity to work with Sam Jackson too. So
I was going to say, yeah, you had a chance to work with him. And Claudia, we haven't talked about all the great voice talent aside from Sam Jackson and Brad, but terrific performances here down the line.
Absolutely. I mean, starting with Craig T. Nelson, and we talked about Holly Hunter. I just blanked out on the name of the
Sarah Vowell.
Yes, Sarah Vowell is amazing.
Sarah's
so
the best.
good. She's so good. Yeah, there's just so much. And Samuel Jackson. I mean, I felt like the character even vaguely looked like him. Did you try to do that? Did you have him in mind as you were drawing?
I think that it might have influenced it a little bit, but I think we had the drawings before we had Sam. So I think that it was just because Sam is cool and we wanted him to be cool, and you know that's his power, is be cool, you know. So
even Wallace Shawn, it's so funny because you know there's certain lines that that we all, you know, when you watch things with your kids, and I watched this with my kids when they were, you know, when it came out, it was 13 years ago now, no more, 16 years ago, yeah. So they were little, and they're now, you know, late 20s and 30. And we would keep doing the same line, like we would do, you know, I'm not happy, Bob, not happy. And that became like a line in our family that we would use all the time. I love Wallace Shawn. I thought he was really great in a very small part.
Yeah, and my wife is the greatest good. I cede her that. Absolutely. So how many wives have quoted that line? I am the greatest. Yeah. Charles, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, at one of the Times book fairs, I got to meet Sarah Vowell, whose work I loved even before that. And when she found out I knew Brad, she asked me to join her at lunch. And when I asked her about this, she said, well, when Pixar first contacted me, I said, I don't know anything about superheroes. That's not something I could be. And then Brad said, what about a girl who's so shy and so insecure she can make herself disappear? And Sarah said, that I can do.
Brad, how did you go about the voice casting process?
Well, everyone is different. Some you imagine almost as you're writing. When I took over Ratatouille, they had a different actor cast as Ego, and I always heard the character as Peter O'Toole. And, the god smiled the day that he said yes, but that's kind of what it's like. And sometimes you bump into a voice just crosses your path. Both Sarah and Patton Oswalt I heard on NPR. Sarah was reading one of her stories, and Patton, there was a routine where he was talking about food, and he was talking about the steakhouse. And it was so hilarious, and he was so invested in it, and he could tell he cared about food, and he sounded just so impassioned. And Sarah had this just super dry viewpoint of things that was very smart and very measured, but she cut right through to the heart of things the way teenagers often do. Where they just eviscerate you with a little comment. And I thought she's perfect because she's got a soft voice, but don't make the mistake of thinking that she's not sharp as a tack, and that she can't, thrust and parry with the best of them. So I just, we contacted her, and my producer, John Walker, called her agent, and the agent said, she's a serious author. There's no way that she's going to do this. People want to get her because her voice is unusual. And, this is not a joke. She's a real, and we thought, well, geez, oh God, it's not like it's a bad thing. It's a good role. And, and then the person said, if you want to call her, okay, you can do it. But I'm telling you right now, this is not something that she's going to be interested in. And we contacted her, and she said, this is the kind of out of the box idea that Pixar is known for. And he loved that she was being a superhero.
That's great. And what she can do with a few words, just with the 3 words you heard her to her brother, is just so perfect. Exactly what that girl would say to her brother. The inflection, it's a great performance. We
actually animated a test of that character to a part of the NPR story. So we took a little bit of the sound before we'd gotten Sarah, and we animated to it, and then we showed Sarah, and she was just stunned. I mean, it was an early version, but it showed that her character is going to translate great.
We have so many terrific questions here. Chris in Utah, Michael wants to know, after you did The Incredibles, how did that influence the work you did on subsequent films like Ratatouille, Up, or Inside Out?
It's interesting. Every movie, first I just want to say real quick, my mom just texted me a picture of a pillow that I sewed for my dad. Anyway.
All right.
Thanks, Mom.
But it
is.
Isn't.
Show it to us.
It's on my. She just texted it to. Oh, I guess it's on my phone.
Yeah, here's an ashtray from Woodstock.
Forget that question. Let's talk about this pillow I made. Okay, I want to talk about this pillow. It's double sewed. The thing about going from film, and it really doesn't matter if it's animated or live action. It's all storytelling, and each one is a different sort of costume to sew in a way. I always think about my grandfather when I do what I do, because he was a tailor and he used to make sure everything fit perfectly. Everything had to fit that person perfectly. So it's not like you could just take that jacket and put it on anyone. And that's how I always approach the scores that I write, is to make sure that this score is only going to work with this movie, and when the goal is that when you see colors from the film or you see images, you're going to think immediately about that movie. Well, I want to do the same thing with the music, because when you hear that, you think immediately about that movie, so it has to have a personality to it, and it has to have, some sort of embodiment of what the story of the film is. So that's what I'm always trying to do. So every time it's a whole new hill to climb, every single time.
Michael.
Oh, sorry.
Just a second, Claudia.
Yeah. Sure.
Michael, we have so many people clamoring to see the photo of the pillow.
Oh.
Can you hold it up? Is that possible?
Yes.
So we can see it on camera?
Yes.
And then Claudia, I'll come right to you after that.
No problem.
But people want the pillow.
If he ever gets tired of composing, he's got another career.
It was a pillow. You could see it's like a D.
Yeah, exactly.
For Dad. D for Dad.
Oh, very nice.
So there you go.
That's great. Claudia, go right ahead.
The toilet cover.
What?
No, I was only going to say, speaking of when you hear music and you immediately think of it, if I ever hear the music from that wonderful montage in Up, your music will make me cry. I mean, it's just because it's so completely interwoven with that.
I think between Up and Lost, I have probably made more people cry than anyone. It's a gift.
It's a gift. Yes. It's a gift like a pillow.
He makes me cry without any music at all.
Yeah, usually it is without any music.
Philip is watching in Italy, and a question for you, Michael, wants to know, how long did it take you to compose the main theme of The Incredibles?
Oh, that one, you know what? Usually there was a lot of versions of it. I went through, even before I show it to Brad, I probably will go through 10 versions of it on my own until I get to a place where I'm happy. If for me to show it to a director, that means I had to have run it through its paces many, many times just to see if in the end, like if I wake up in the morning and listen to it again and don't hate it, that's the day to show it, but there's a lot of, anguish prior to that, getting it to the place where you want to. So I don't know exactly how long it took. It probably took a couple of weeks to get to that thing, that thing, and I remember just messing around with that was like forever. That was like, that just took forever to get that right for me. I don't know why, but once I kind of got that, everything else started coming into place. But
Ian in Los Angeles wants to know, is your writing ever influenced by specific musicians you think of performing it at the scoring sessions?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And sometimes the lack of writing is influenced by the musicians I have, meaning I have this incredible rhythm section that I'm blessed to work with, which includes people like George Deering and Abe Laboriel, Bernie Dressel, the list goes on and on, Andrew Sinowick. But like with Abe, greatest bass player in the world. Abe played with Mancini and all over the place. For him, I don't dare write a part. I give him a chart and I might give him an idea. And sometimes I'll give him a melody to play, but most of the time it's just like, Abe, do your thing. Because one of the great gifts of the musicians here is that it's like Brad said, if it's only your ideas, you're closing yourself off to greatness that's going to come from the outside. And that's what these musicians do. They bring greatness, especially the rhythm players, because they're the ones that have the freedom. Can't really do it with the string section, tell them play anything they want. It doesn't really work. But with rhythm guys, on the guitar, they're incredible. So yeah.
Given who Abe Laboriel has played with in his career and all the recordings we have, in our homes that are on our Spotify list that he's been involved with, I would love to hear the conversations between the two of you, because I can't imagine the stories he has to tell.
Larry,
Abe is one of the most special people because, this is one of the things I love, is like when he's at a session, he'll always come up to me and go, "Thank you for inviting us. Thank you for inviting us." And I remember the first time he said that to me, I didn't really I was like, whoa, wait a minute. No. I thought I was inviting you. I mean, I thought you're allowing me to use your talents to make this thing, and to see it from that perspective was so interesting. And it just really made me understand how much we all love working together, and how fun it is to create something and to do it in a kind and decent environment. That's a wonderful gift that we all get to have.
Charles, go ahead.
Just quickly, Brad and Michael's work in this and their other films also showcases how effective animation is when it's just visuals and music and it's not talking you to death. As good as many of the lines in the film are, when Dash is running so fast that he's going across the water, he looks down, he realizes what he's doing, he's excited by it, you're with him then. Whereas if he said, "Oh, wow, I can run on water," it wouldn't work. But the music and the image and the acting just bring it together and you're running with him.
It's funny you mentioned that scene, because you were talking about different musicians or inspirations. What are inspirations? And one of the inspirations for that very moment was a trumpet player named Al Hurt. Who was just this incredible trumpet player. And he did a version of the Green Hornet theme, which I used to love listening to. And it is just this incredible,
virtuoso, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's virtuistic, and it's a virtuoso performance. And when you listen to that arrangement of it, I was just like, yeah, that's the energy I want for this. I want to make this feel like that, Yeah. I love the players. It's so great to be with them.
All right. Well, we are almost out of time, but I want to give everybody a chance just to have a closing thought about the significance of The Incredibles before we close our conversation this evening. Claudia, let me start with you. And sort of where you situate this film in film, because to me, I don't pull it out. We've been talking a lot about animation, but it's not an animated film. It is a great film.
It is a great film, and I love the writing of it, and I feel like it's just as much for adults as it is for kids, if not more so, because there's such clever dialogue, and then sort of the comments about about mediocrity. I know you weren't trying to do an Ayn Rand thing, but the comments and sort of our litigiousness as a society, and there's all these little great social comments that are interwoven into it that just speak to me. And then I think of how much my kids loved it when they were 10 and 7 years old. And they, I think one of them likes mid-century design because of the fact that she saw it in The Incredibles, and just it brought me back to sort of my youth of the 60s and 70s too. But in terms of how it all fits into animation, I just feel like it's such a great story. It's just everything. It's firing on all cylinders. You have great acting in it. You have great visuals. It's exciting. It's, the music fits. It's like, a sock and a glove. It's just symbiotic. It's perfect. It's a perfect.
Charles, closing thought from you.
Well, with Incredibles, Ratatouille, and Iron Giant, Brad has made 3 of the great animated films, and that's not of his generation, of the last decades. 80 years later, we're still talking about Pinocchio and Dumbo and Bambi. And I think in 80 years, people will still be talking about The Iron Giant and Incredibles and Ratatouille, because they are great films and great animated films.
Michael, closing thought from you about the significance of this individual film in your career.
Yeah, this was a huge, huge, huge deal for me because, as I said earlier, it was the first movie I got to do. I had been working on some great TV stuff with JJ prior to that, JJ Abrams with Alias and all of that. And he plucked me from my previous job as video game composer and then Brad took me and had the faith in me to, when he had no reason to have faith in me, to take on this huge movie for this company, Pixar. So that was the beginning of so much for me. I was lucky. There was 3 people I was so lucky to have met during my career. One was Steven Spielberg, who invited me in to do the video game music for the games he was producing. The second was JJ, and then third was Brad, was the cherry on top, because that just kicked me into the film business in a huge way, which is exactly where I wanted to be. So thank you, Brad.
And you two are collaborating on a musical, is that right?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, in fact, we have a meeting tomorrow.
Oh.
You should all join us. It'll be great.
That'd be fun. Yeah, we'll give you ideas. It comes cheap.
We'll see.
Yeah, he sent me a text going, I'll see you in 15 minutes. And I'm like, oh my God, are we doing the meeting early or what?
I sent him the text before this because I knew there's a slight chance he may forget. Kind of,
And then I was like, oh, the Incredibles thing. Oh, okay, yeah.
Hey, just 1,000 of us will show up to help you with this. What can you tell us about the project, Brad?
Not much. I would just say that it's a live action musical with about 20 minutes of animation in it, maybe a little bit more. All kinds of different animation, hand drawn, computer, all kinds of weird stuff. But it's definitely. We all recognize how hard it is to do a good musical. There's really only a handful of great ones. And Michael and I are both extremely frightened by this idea. And that's why we want to do it. It's like we're both frightened, and we recognize that if you're frightened, there must be something worthwhile in there. So that's what we're doing.
Yeah. I don't want to be a weasel in front of everyone. So I'll call you later, and Larry, and tell you all about it.
So my thoughts on The Incredibles are it was the first time that I got to take an idea in a feature-length film right from the very tiniest nut to the finished film. So it was tremendously gratifying for me, and it was the most fun. The first Incredibles was the most fun I ever had on making any film. Pixar, I had gone through the situation of not feeling supported, when we were making Iron Giant so much. And I felt like Pixar was the antithesis of that. It was all about support and challenging me to, make it as good as possible. So it was really great, very close to my heart, because it's all the kinds of things that I loved when I was a kid, combined with my feeling for my family, the family that I grew up with and the family that I now have with my wife and sons. So it's all those good things kind of wrapped up together. So that's where it sits for me. And I'm really grateful to have met Michael for that, because he's going to have to like lock me out or something to keep me from bothering him. I just really love working with him.
You have the key. You're always allowed in.
Hey, thank you so much for joining us for this. We'll eagerly anticipate the next project that you two are working on. And for the two of you to have this film that people are going to be watching, as Charles was saying, years and years, generations into the future, and appreciating it and seeing it as a breakthrough film in what it accomplished. That has to be a very, very rewarding feeling. Thank you so much, Brad. I appreciate it. Brad Bird, Michael Giacchino, thank you so much. My good friends from Film Week, who I love working with our show on KPCC that airs every Friday at 11 and Saturday at noon. Claudia Puig. Claudia, thank you so much.
Thank you for
It's
including
been great.
me.
It's been great. And Charles, always a pleasure. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. Charles
Thank you,
Sullivan.
Larry.
And thank you for all of your support for KPCC, our in-person events that we're now doing virtually. And please stay tuned as we'll tell you which film is next up in Film Week and Chill, a series of movies, just fun films to enjoy during times when we're all trying to grit it out to the end of the pandemic. Have a great evening.